Alright guys, we are ready for lesson 4 of chapter 3, and today we're talking about slope-intercept form. Well, we already know what slope is, so now we need to talk about intercept. Whenever you think of intercept, whenever I think of intercept, I think of an interception in football, and that's what this says at the very top of our page. An interception in football is when a player catches a pass made, a defensive player, someone from the opposite team, catches a pass from the offensive player. It's when they take the ball away. Well, in math, it means something a little bit different, though. In math, the y-intercept is whatever the x value is, whatever the y value is when x is 0. So the y-intercept is when x is 0, and we need to know what y is. That y is the y-intercept. Another way to think of it is where where the line crosses the y-axis. This is the y-axis, the up and down axis. Where this line crosses the y-axis, this point right here is my y-intercept. Okay? So let's see how we get this formula. Well, we already know that we're solving for slope because it says right here we're going to do the slope formula. And hopefully you remember the slope formula. I'm solving for m because m is how we know we're solving for slope. M is slope. And to find slope, you have to find the change in y over the change in x. You're going to be so tired of hearing y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. You're going to have it memorized. Hopefully you should, because that's what this entire section is about. So to find slope, my slope formula is y2 minus y1 over x2 minus x1. And now my x1 and my y1 is the same as when one of my x's is 0, because remember we're trying to solve for the slope-intercept, the y-intercept. And the y-intercept is where one of your x's is 0. So I have y minus b, because my y1 is b. So y minus b over x minus 0. And that's going to give me my slope. Well, if I solve that, y minus b is just y minus b, and x minus 0 is x. So now I want to get this y by itself, so I have to take both sides times x, and that cancels out my x's, and I'm left with y minus b equals m times x. It's the same thing that we did before, but now I want to get this y by itself, so I have to add b to both sides. So my answer is y equals mx plus b. And in that equation, my m, you already know that the lowercase m is slope. The b then is the y-intercept, where this line crosses the y-axis. That's what my b is. Okay? And it says, how can knowing about an interception in football help you remember the definition of a y-intercept? Well, in math, the y-intercept is where the line crosses the y-axis. And if you think of that, well, it's where this one crosses the y-axis. So if I think about where the ball is caught, it can be the moment of catching the ball. So that's how that can help you remember. If you just remember that the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis, I think you'll be okay. So let's look at this example. Y equals mx plus b. That equation is known as the slope-intercept form. So y equals mx plus b is the slope-intercept form of an equation. And it's very easy to find the slope and the intercept, because y equals, move that over so you can see, mx plus b remember the m, or the number, this is going to be a number in front of x, and that's our slope. B is also going to be a number, and that's going to be the y-intercept. So the number in front of x is the slope. The number without an x is the y-intercept. So if I look at this one, it's very easy to see which one is the slope and which one's the y-intercept. The number connected to x is the slope. So this is my m, or my slope. The number not connected to x is my y-intercept, or my b. Okay? So if I look at these examples down here, y equals a negative 5x plus 3. The number connected to x is the slope, so my slope is a negative 5. My y-intercept, which is b, is a positive 3. If I look at the second one, y equals 1/4 x minus 6. The number connected to x is my slope. So the number connected to x is a 1/4. The number not connected to x is the y-intercept, or b. So my number not connected to x is a negative 6. Go ahead and try to do the last one on your own. All right, let's look down here at this example. Example number 2, it says write an equation of a line in slope-intercept form. It gives you the slope. There's my slope, slope of negative 3, and a y-intercept of negative 4. So in this equation, the y equals mx plus b, it gives me my slope. My slope was a negative 3, and my y-intercept is a negative 4. So if I rewrite that, it's y equals, replace this m with negative 3, and the b is a negative 4. So here's what the equation would look like. Okay, now let's look at it from a line. Well, I can tell right here where this line crosses the y-axis, and it crosses it right here. So if I figure out what the point that is, that's a 1, 2, 3, 4. So my slope-intercept is 4, because that's where it crosses the y-axis. And then I find my slope. Since this line is going down, I'm going to have a negative slope. I go down 1. So my slope, I went down 1, so that's a negative 1. And I go over 2. So it's a negative 1 over 2. So my slope is a negative 1/2. My b is a 4. So if I rewrote that equation in slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b, my m is a negative 1/2. And my b is a 4. Now I want to talk about this just a minute, because we haven't really talked about slope. If your line looks like this, that's a positive slope. If your line looks like this one, think of it going uphill. If you're going uphill, it's a positive slope. If you're going downhill, that's a negative slope. So because this one was going downhill, I automatically know my slope is negative. And sure enough, my slope was negative 1/2. Okay? Let's look over here at example, or the got it problems. Let's do D. It says write an equation in slope-intercept form for the graph shown. So we're looking at this graph right here, and I want to find what is my m. I have to find my slope, and I have to find my y-intercept. Well, the y-intercept is where it crosses the y-axis. So I'm looking for where this line crosses this up and down axis, because this is my y-axis. And where does this graph cross it? It crosses it right here. So if I count, that's at negative 1, negative 2. So my b is a negative 2. My y-intercept is a negative 2. My m then, I'm going to count how far up and how far over I go. Because remember, slope is rise over run. So my rise is 1, 2. And my run to get to this point right here is I go over 1. So my slope is a 2 over 1, or 2, because 2 over 1 is the same as 2. So now if I rewrite this in slope-intercept form, I replace my m with a 2, and I replace my y-intercept with a negative 2. Okay, so that's how I would write it for that graph. Okay, now let's look at example 4. Student Council is selling t-shirts during Spirit Week. It costs $20 for the design and $5 to print each shirt. So the cost y to print x shirts is given by y equals 5x plus 20. The 20 to design the shirt and $5 per shirt to print. So it says graph this equation. Well, the first thing you have to do is find the slope and the y-intercept. Well, hopefully looking at this, you can say y equals mx plus b. So my m is my slope, so my m is 5. So my slope is 5. My y-intercept, my b, is 20. So I know it's going to cross this y-axis at 20. So from there, I'm gonna start by graphing this one first. Graph your y-intercept first, which means I'm going to graph up and down at 20. So I'm going to go right up here, I'm going to put a dot at 20, which they've already done for us. And then my slope is 5. So then I'm from my y-intercept, I'm going to go up 5 over 1, because if I turn this into a fraction, any whole number turned into a fraction is just that number over 1. So this is my up and down change. This is my left and right change. So I'm going to go up 5 over 1. So from here I'm going to go up 5. So from 20 to 25 is up 5 over 1. And then if I look, I can go up 5 over 1. I should have a point right there. Up 5 over 1. I should have a point right there. Up 5 over 1. You see why this is creating a straight line. Okay? The last example, let's do this one. It says a taxi fare, taking a taxi, fare is how much it costs to take a taxi. A taxi fare, y, can be determined by the equation y equals 0.5x plus 3.5. Okay, blah, 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 blah. Well, first of all, we have to decide what is my y-intercept and what is my slope. That's what you should do every time. Well, if I say this in slope-intercept form, it's y equals mx plus b. M is 0.5. X plus b is 350. So I'm going to start by graphing my y-intercept first. So I need to go up to 350 because that's my y-intercept. That's where it's going to cross this line right here. So I go up to 350 and I put a dot. From there, my slope is up a half over 1, because if I turn 0.5 into a fraction, it's 0.5 over 1, or hopefully you know that 0.5 is the same as 1/2. Either way is okay. So 0.5 over 1, so I go up a half over 1, up a half over 1, up a half over 1. And if I continued on, I would have a line that roughly looked like that. That's going to be a pretty rough one because I didn't use a ruler to draw it. You should use a ruler to draw it. But that is what your line will look like. Okay? And it says interpret the intercepts and the slope of the y-intercept. Interpret the slope and the y-intercept. Well, if I look at this, for every half and over 1, that means that the y-intercept, what does that mean as far as cab fare goes? Well, this plus 350 is how much it is the flat fee. Regardless of where you go, if you go 1 mile, it's going to be 350. If you go 50 miles, you're going to add that 350 onto it. And the slope, then, is how much it charges per mile. So regardless of how far you go, you're going to pay 350. But the actual cab fare is the slope and how much per mile is charged. Okay? All right, guys. go ahead and write down any questions that you have in the margin and come back and ask us later, and we will see you guys tomorrow. Have a great day. Bye.